What if the monster in your nightmares lived under your own roof? The most dangerous predators don't lurk in shadows. They sit across from you at dinner, help with homework, and kiss you goodnight. The suburban community where the Harpers lived never suspected that behind Richard Harper's charming smile and community accolades lurked a father who would destroy his family in the most devastating way imaginable. Their home on Maple Street stood as a monument to normalcy, until the day blood stained their pristine living room floor. Have you ever wondered how well you truly know those closest to you? The people who hold your secrets, your trust, your safety in their hands? When Laura Harper discovered her husband had been sexually abusing their teenage daughter for years, culminating in a pregnancy that could no longer hide their family's darkest secret, she never imagined it would end with her lying dead beside her daughter, victims of a man who chose murder over facing his crimes. What you're about to witness isn't just another crime story. This is a dissection of how abuse hides in plain sight, how predators groom not just their victims but entire communities, and how the facade of respectability can mask unspeakable horrors. The Harper family tragedy serves as a devastating reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers come from those sworn to protect us. Before we continue, take a moment right now to subscribe and hit that notification bell. These stories aren't just for entertainment. They contain critical lessons that could save lives. Your support helps us continue bringing these important narratives to light, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. On paper, the Harpers were enviable. Richard, a respected accountant whose financial acumen earned him admiration throughout town. Laura, the devoted mother who organized neighborhood potlucks and school fundraisers. Their daughter Lily, a quiet academic achiever with a bright future ahead. Their son Ethan, athletic and popular. They attended church on Sundays, hosted barbecues in summer, and decorated their home with twinkling lights every December. Yet beneath this perfect veneer festered a poison that would eventually consume them all. A poison that began with a father's twisted obsession with his own daughter. What made this ordinary family implode so catastrophically? What warning signs were missed? And how could something so horrific happen in a community where neighbors prided themselves on looking out for one another? Let's peel back the layers of respectability and examine how the Harper family's tragedy unfolded, and what we can learn from the devastation that followed. From the outside, the Harper household embodied suburban success. Their two-story colonial with pristine landscaping and a basketball hoop in the driveway projected stability and comfort. Every morning, Richard Harper left for work in pressed suits, carrying a leather briefcase filled with financial reports and client portfolios. His accounting firm handled investments for half the town's businesses, positioning him as a trusted advisor to local entrepreneurs and community leaders. Richard has a gift with numbers, his colleagues would say. He can spot a financial opportunity from a mile away. This professional prowess translated into community respect. He served on the board of the local Rotary Club, donated generously to charity drives, and offered free financial workshops at the community center. His calculated generosity created a public persona that seemed beyond reproach. Laura Harper complemented her husband perfectly. Where Richard projected authority, Laura exuded warmth. She baked welcome cookies for new neighbors, coordinated meal deliveries when someone fell ill, and never missed a parent-teacher conference. Her garden won awards, her holiday parties drew crowds, and her volunteer work at the Children's Hospital earned her a feature in the local newspaper. Lily, their teenage daughter, carried herself with a quiet dignity beyond her years. Honor roll student, talented pianist, and dedicated volunteer, she checked every box of adolescent achievement. Yet classmates noted how she flinched at sudden movements, how she rarely invited friends to her home, how her eyes darted to her father whenever he entered a room. Ethan, their son, existed in the comfortable shadow of his father's attention, developing into a sociable teenager with an easy laugh and natural athletic ability. Unlike his sister, he moved through the world with an uncomplicated confidence, unaware of the darkness growing within their household. The early warning signs floated just beneath the surface. Richard's hand lingering too long on Lily's shoulder during church services. The way Lily's participation in after-school activities mysteriously decreased as she entered her teens. The soundproof renovation to Richard's home office. The locked bedroom doors. The hushed arguments between Richard and Laura that abruptly ceased when children approached. Richard just wants what's best for his daughter. Neighbors would rationalize when they noticed his excessive monitoring of Lily's friendships. He's protective because he loves her. How often do we mistake control for care? When does protection become possession? The line between a father's legitimate concern and obsessive domination can blur, until it shatters completely. What if the neighbors who praised Richard's involvement had questioned why a father needed to approve his teenage daughter's text messages? What if Laura's friends had pushed harder when she deflected questions about Lily's increasing isolation? What if the teacher who noticed Lily's declining participation had filed a report instead of accepting the excuse of family matters? The Harper household operated under Richard's carefully constructed system of incremental boundaries. Each small rule created a perimeter. Each restriction limited outside interference. Each family tradition of privacy built another wall between Lily and potential rescue. And within those walls, something monstrous was taking shape. A betrayal so fundamental it would ultimately destroy them all. Richard Harper's transformation from father to predator occurred through calculated steps over years. The process began with special attention. Moments that initially appeared as fatherly affection but served as carefully placed foundation stones for future exploitation. "You understand me better than anyone, Lily," he would whisper during their private father-daughter talks, that grew increasingly frequent as she approached puberty. These conversations always happened behind closed doors, often when Laura was busy with community obligations or tending to Ethan's activities. Richard established himself as Lily's primary emotional interpreter, repeatedly telling her how other people, classmates, teachers, even her mother, couldn't possibly understand her unique spirit. This continuous undermining created a psychological dependency, making Lily doubt her perceptions of everyone except her father. "Your friends are just jealous of how special you are," he would explain whenever Lily faced normal teenage social challenges. Rather than helping her navigate these difficulties, Richard used them as opportunities to further isolate her. Each friendship that withered reinforced his narrative that only he truly cared for her. The physical boundaries deteriorated gradually. What began as extended hugs evolved into inappropriate touches disguised as affection. Richard normalized this behavior through persistent exposure. Small violations repeated until they no longer registered as wrong in Lily's developing mind. "This is how fathers show their love," he assured her, creating an alternate reality where his actions represented devotion rather than exploitation. When confusion or resistance surfaced, Richard deployed guilt as a weapon. "After everything I've done for this family, you don't trust me?" As Lily entered high school, Richard implemented stricter controls. He insisted on driving her to and from school despite the convenient bus route. He monitored her phone under the guise of protecting her from online dangers. He requested detailed accounts of her daily interactions, creating an atmosphere of constant surveillance. Richard's most insidious tactic was weaponizing Lily's academic success. Her achievements became evidence of their special bond and his superior parenting. When teachers praised her work, Richard claimed credit for her intellect. "See what happens when you listen to me?" he would say, reinforcing his dominance while appearing supportive to outsiders. Meanwhile, Laura Harper lived adjacent to this abuse, separated by an invisible wall of manipulation. Richard strategically fostered division between mother and daughter through subtle criticisms. "Your mother means well, but she doesn't understand how exceptional you are." He scheduled his private time with Lily during Laura's absences and manufactured conflicts that positioned him as mediator between them. Laura, overwhelmed with maintaining their perfect external image and managing household responsibilities, missed the warning signals. The instances when she questioned Richard's excessive interest in Lily's life were deflected with practiced responses. "Someone needs to guide her," or "I'm just being involved. Isn't that what good fathers do?" The hidden abuse created physical manifestations. Lily's diminishing eye contact, her shrinking posture, her fading voice. Her bedroom became a fortress of small resistances. Journals hidden beneath floorboards, headphones used to create momentary escapes, windows stared through while imagining different lives. By 16, Lily existed in Richard's carefully constructed reality, where normal boundaries had been systematically dismantled. Her world had contracted to revolve around his approval, her sense of self dictated by his perception. The psychological cage had no visible bars, yet proved more confining than any physical prison. The signs of abuse often hide in behaviors we mistake for dedication or protection. Have you noticed similar warning patterns in families you know? Share in the comments below what subtle indicators might signal that a relationship has crossed from care into control. Your insight could help others recognize these dangerous dynamics before they escalate. Remember, identifying these patterns early saves lives. For the Harper family, recognition came far too late, when a physical reality emerged that could no longer be concealed or denied. The bathroom tiles felt cold against Lily's knees as she knelt, clutching the plastic pregnancy test with trembling fingers. The 2 pink lines appeared with devastating clarity, undeniable evidence of what she had long tried to suppress. At 16, Lily Harper carried her father's child. For 3 days, she moved through her routine like a ghost, the knowledge burning inside her chest. Food lost its taste. Sleep became impossible. Her reflection in the mirror showed a stranger with hollow eyes and ashen skin. Each morning brought waves of nausea that she disguised as a stomach bug, each night tears that soaked her pillow. The pregnancy represented more than physical violation. It was the ultimate breach of the secrecy Richard had enforced for years. This truth couldn't be hidden behind closed doors or explained away with his manipulative logic. It existed as irrefutable evidence of his crimes. On the 4th day, during a rare moment when Richard worked late, Lily collapsed into her mother's arms in the kitchen. Words spilled out between violent sobs, fragmented, raw truths that painted a horrifying picture of life within their home. Dad, he's been... Mom, I'm pregnant. It's been happening for years. Laura Harper's reaction mirrored the 5 stages of grief compressed into minutes. First came disbelief, a reflexive shield against information too monstrous to process. There must be some mistake, she whispered, stepping back as if physical distance could separate her from these revelations. Your father would never. You must be confused about. Anger followed, not at Richard, but tragically misdirected at Lily. Why would you say something so terrible? Do you understand what this would do to our family? The bargaining stage emerged as Laura suggested alternative explanations. Perhaps Lily had a secret boyfriend. Perhaps she misunderstood her father's intentions. Perhaps this was a cry for attention. When Lily lifted her shirt to reveal bruises where Richard had gripped her arms during recent encounters, reality crashed through Laura's defenses. Depression and acceptance collided in a single, devastating moment of clarity. Laura's body crumpled against the kitchen counter as years of ignored signs aligned into a pattern she could no longer deny. "Oh my God!" she repeated, voice dropping to a whisper. "Oh my God!" The psychological earthquake rippled through each family member differently. For Lily, confessing brought contradictory emotions. Relief at finally speaking her truth alongside terror of Richard's retaliation. For Laura, the ground beneath her marriage disintegrated, revealing that her life partner was a predator who had violated their child under her own roof. Ethan, initially kept from this knowledge, sensed the atmospheric change. The household's emotional temperature had shifted dramatically. Hushed conversations stopped when he entered rooms. His mother's eyes were perpetually red-rimmed, and Lily remained locked in her bedroom for hours. The stakes became brutally clear. This pregnancy created imminent danger on multiple fronts. Richard would soon discover physical evidence of his crime. The community would learn that their respected accountant was a child abuser. Legal consequences loomed: potential arrest, imprisonment, public disgrace. For a man who had built his existence around controlling perceptions, this exposure threatened total destruction. Laura faced her own impossible equation. How could she protect her daughter while processing her husband's betrayal? How could she navigate the ruins of what she thought was her life? The pregnancy forced immediate action. Medical decisions couldn't wait. Justice couldn't be postponed. Safety couldn't be compromised. That evening, Laura made a decision that would alter their family forever. With shaking hands, she reached for her phone and began researching domestic violence shelters outside their town. She would take Lily and Ethan and escape under cover of darkness. They would rebuild somewhere Richard couldn't find them. What she didn't realize was that Richard had already noticed the shift. He had seen the pregnancy test wrapper in the bathroom trash. He had monitored their hushed conversations, and he was already formulating his response. Laura Harper's transformation occurred overnight. The woman who had spent decades accommodating others, smoothing social tensions, and maintaining harmony now stood rigid with newfound purpose. Her maternal instinct, long redirected into community service and hosting duties, surged forward with primal force. The passive homemaker vanished, replaced by a mother determined to save her children from the predator sleeping beside her. She executed her plan with military precision. While Richard attended an evening business meeting, Laura withdrew $2,000 from their joint account, the maximum ATM limit. She packed 3 small bags with essential documents and minimal clothing. She left her wedding ring on the nightstand and wrote a brief note to her son, explaining they needed to leave immediately. "I'll tell you everything once we're safe," she promised Ethan, who stared with confused eyes as she hustled him into the idling car where Lily already waited, huddled in the back seat with a blanket drawn to her chin. They made it 3 miles before Richard's black sedan appeared in their rearview mirror. He had installed tracking software on all their phones months earlier, justified as a family safety measure. The evening business meeting was fabricated. Richard had been parked down the street, monitoring their movements. The digital leash he'd placed on his family now served its actual purpose, preventing escape. After forcing their car to the roadside, Richard approached with a smile for any potential witnesses driving past. "Family emergency," he explained cheerfully to a concerned motorist who slowed down. "My wife's just a bit confused. Everything's fine." Once back at the house, Richard's carefully maintained facade began to crack. The composed financial advisor who charmed clients and impressed colleagues devolved into something raw and dangerous. His voice alternated between whispered threats and booming accusations. His movements became erratic, pacing, then freezing, then suddenly invading personal space. "After everything I've done for this family," he repeated, his mantra of self-justification. "After every sacrifice, this is how you repay me?" Laura stood her ground in the kitchen, positioning herself between Richard and the children. The power dynamic had fundamentally shifted. His psychological control diminished with each passing hour as Laura's protective resolve strengthened. "You're sick, Richard," she stated flatly. "What you've done to Lily is criminal. What you've done to all of us is monstrous." His eyes darkened at this direct confrontation. The muscles in his jaw twitched uncontrollably. His hands, normally steady enough to write complex financial formulas, now trembled with barely contained rage. "Nobody will believe you," he hissed, his final desperate grasp at manipulation. "I'm respected in this town. You're nothing without me." The pressure within Richard intensified. His perfectly constructed life, the admiration, the authority, the absolute control, balanced on a knife's edge. One phone call to police would destroy everything. The pregnancy would provide DNA evidence. His carefully crafted identity would collapse into ruins. What would you do if cornered like Richard, when all your secrets stand exposed and the life you've built faces total destruction? Most people surrender to consequences. But predators who view family as possessions often make a different choice. In the Harper household, that choice was approaching with unstoppable momentum. The Harper kitchen transformed from a space of family meals into a battlefield at precisely 11:42 p.m. Richard's composure collapsed completely when Laura announced she had already contacted her sister about taking them in. His face contorted as if physically struck, the realization of imminent exposure overtaking him. "No one leaves this house," he whispered, reaching for the wooden knife block on the counter. Laura lunged for her phone as Richard advanced. Her fingers brushed the screen before he grabbed her wrist with crushing force. The device clattered across the floor as she shouted for the children to run. Lily emerged from her bedroom at her mother's scream, freezing in the hallway as the scene unfolded. The kitchen light cast harsh shadows as Richard brandished the chef's knife. Laura backed away, hands raised protectively. "Think about what you're doing," she pleaded, her voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. "This isn't you, Richard. You've destroyed everything," he responded, advancing step by measured step. When Laura attempted to move toward the door, Richard struck with shocking speed. The first blow caught her shoulder, drawing a pained cry that echoed through the house. The second found more vital territory. Blood bloomed across Laura's white nightgown as she collapsed against the refrigerator, family photos held by magnets raining down around her. Lily's scream pierced the night as she rushed to her mother's side. Richard turned toward his daughter, the knife now stained with his wife's blood. His expression shifted, a moment of grotesque tenderness amid the horror. "We could have kept our secret," he said, reaching for her. "You were always my favorite." The struggle that followed was brief but brutal. Lily fought with the desperation of someone who had nothing left to lose. Her resistance only intensified Richard's frenzy. When silence finally fell over the kitchen, two bodies lay motionless on the tile floor. Upstairs, 14-year-old Ethan woke to sounds he couldn't immediately identify. Groggy and confused, he crept toward the staircase, calling out tentatively. Receiving no response, he descended into a nightmare. The scene that greeted him defied comprehension. His mother and sister lying still, his father standing amid carnage, knife in hand. Their eyes met across the room in a moment of horrible recognition. Richard looked at his son with something resembling clarity. Whatever madness had driven his actions momentarily receded, revealing the full weight of what he had done. Without speaking, he turned the blade on himself in one final act of escape. In the silence that followed, Ethan reached with trembling fingers for the phone his mother had tried to use. 3 numbers. 3 simple digits that arrived too late for 2 lives but would forever change his own. Some violence leaves wounds that never truly heal. News of the Harper tragedy rippled through the community like a shockwave. Neighbors who had barbecued in their backyard stood stunned behind police tape. Local newspapers that once featured Richard's charity contributions now ran headlines documenting his crimes. National media descended, transforming quiet suburban streets into impromptu broadcast studios. "We never suspected" became the haunting refrain from friends, teachers, and community leaders. This collective blindness sparked difficult conversations throughout the town. Parents held their children closer. Schools implemented additional abuse prevention programs. The facade of suburban safety cracked, revealing uncomfortable truths about privacy, perception, and the dangerous myth of knowing our neighbors. For Ethan Harper, survival became both burden and purpose. Orphaned at 14 and witness to unimaginable horror, he moved across the country to live with his maternal aunt. The psychological impact manifested in predictable yet devastating ways. Nightmares, trust issues, survivor's guilt. Years of therapy helped him process not just the violent end but the systematic abuse that preceded it. "I missed the signs too," he admitted in his only public statement, given on his 18th birthday. Living inside the situation made it impossible to see clearly, but looking back, all the warning flags were waving in plain sight. Those warning flags compose an essential education for all of us. Richard's excessive control over Lily's schedule and relationships. The inappropriate physical boundaries disguised as affection. The systematic isolation from potential support networks. The subtle undermining of Laura's parental authority. Each element represented a clear indicator of abuse that went unaddressed. Prevention of similar tragedies requires community vigilance and education. Schools, religious organizations, and medical professionals must recognize that abuse thrives in isolation. When a parent restricts a child's normal social development, questions should follow. When a teenager withdraws from previously enjoyed activities, investigation is warranted. When family dynamics center around one controlling figure, intervention becomes necessary. For individuals, the Harper case offers critical lessons. First, trust behavioral patterns over public personas. Richard's community standing provided perfect cover for his crimes. Second, recognize that abuse escalates when threatened with exposure. The most dangerous period for victims often comes during attempted escape. Third, understand that predators rarely have a look. They hide behind respectability, charm, and social standing. Your awareness saves lives. This isn't hyperbole, it's statistical fact. Like and share this video to help others recognize the warning signs we've discussed. Comment below with resources available in your community for abuse victims. The collective knowledge we build here creates a safety net for vulnerable people trapped in situations they cannot escape alone. Ethan Harper eventually became an advocate for child protection, transforming his family's destruction into a mission to prevent similar tragedies. His journey reminds us that even from the darkest circumstances, purpose can emerge. The Harper tragedy wasn't an isolated incident. Behind countless front doors, similar abuses unfold. Invisible to neighbors, hidden from friends, unknown to colleagues. The most dangerous predators don't announce themselves. They build trust, establish authority, and create systems that silence their victims. What makes these cases particularly devastating is their preventability. Each step in Richard's methodical destruction of his family represented an opportunity for intervention. Each warning sign offered a moment where different choices could have altered the outcome. The school counselor who noticed Lily's withdrawal. The neighbor who heard late-night arguments. The colleague who witnessed Richard's possessive behavior at office parties. Small observations that, when connected, reveal deadly patterns. Our society struggles with a fundamental contradiction. We value family privacy while expecting protection for the vulnerable. This tension creates gaps where abuse flourishes. Bridging these gaps requires both institutional vigilance and personal courage. It means asking uncomfortable questions when behavioral patterns seem concerning. It means believing victims when they speak, even if their abusers hold positions of respect. For Ethan Harper and countless survivors like him, justice came too late. Their stories remind us that protection must precede tragedy, not follow it. Join our True Crime Village community as we continue examining cases that offer crucial lessons. Subscribe now and activate notifications to receive our upcoming investigation into institutional failures that enable abusers to operate unchecked for decades. Remember, your awareness protects others. Your vigilance creates safety. Your attention to these stories might save a life closer to you than you realize. Until next time, stay informed, stay vigilant, and keep asking questions. The truth may be difficult, but ignorance can be deadly.